So, here today to do Zankyou no Terror episode 3 review, and what an episode it was. Right? The police, they finally solved Sphinx's riddle. They finally solved it. At the beginning of this episode, we see 9 and 12. 9 saying to 12, I wonder if that riddle, last riddle was too hard, but the police finally catch on. But they decide to go along with making this other bomb, this other sequence of events anyways, and they did solve it with help mainly from Shibazaki, that guy that solved the riddle in fact last episode. But they didn't move fast enough, they didn't um come together fast enough, and they didn't formulate fast enough to stop or prevent that last bomb. But things seems to be heading in a new direction. So I believe there's four main points that happen in this chapter, so I'll go through them one by one. First, we actually get to see a snapshot of the past between 9 and 12. Right? 12, the older one, he looks like he constantly has these traumatic childhood memories, right, of they trying to run away, they jumping over the fence, him 9 himself, as 9 as well as 12, along with this other white haired kid that we saw in one of your memories, and all of them are in this kind of institution looking place with white suits all around them, people just in white shoes like a mental hospital, and these kids are being told that some pretty awful stuff, like there's no love for them, so they won't be able to get their name, and they'll have new lives and this and that. It's kind of brainwashing looking facility, so that's interesting. So coming from the background of that, we can get to see some reason why these two kids decide to act in this way, to play out bombs now, to put bombs in public areas with the possibility and with the hazard of harming others. And their main objective, it seems, is not necessary to involve the innocent civilians in their bombs, right? Their squabble is with probably a governmental agency. As stated in last week's episode, they made a direct conflict, a direct upfront strike against a police station by planting that bomb directly at the police station. So their squabble seems to be, with the higher ups in society, not necessarily, with the ordinary civilians, because if they wanted to, they could have killed hundreds, they could have killed thousands of civilians from first episode and second episode if they really wanted to. But we know that that's not the case. So their squabble is with some kind of governmental structure, some organizational structure, and that seems to be confirmed in this episode. Now, second of all, we get to see Lisa, right? The same girl that they threatened that she's an accomplice, but at the same time, 9 told her that she's not one of them. So if she tries to do anything rash or tries to run away, he will kill her. And in this week's episode, we see, from last week's episode, we get a snapshot into her personal life. She's bullied by the girls at her school. Her mom seems that her husband or father went away, and her mom constantly bothers her while she's at school, constantly sending her texts. When she comes home, just screaming Lisa, Lisa, Lisa. Her mom really seems psychotic from the whole fact that she's focusing on father not being there and focusing on everything being wrong. So in that case, Lisa is really down in the depths, in terms of everything that's happening around her. Even possibly in the case of she being involved with these, terrorist kids, things seem not to be exactly going too well for Lisa. So we see her pack up her stuff. She was trying to escape quietly, but her mother heard the door open, but she decided to run out anyway. So she seems to have run away from her mother, and towards the end of this episode, when the news was being broadcasted that the police actually stopped and disarmed the bomb that was placed from Sphinx riddle, we see her looking up at the monitor, looking up at the screen, observing the news of what's happening. She seems to still be in the city area. So I like to see how that plays out. I like to see what happens along those lines. Now, third of all, Sphinx's riddle. This new riddle that Sphinx's gave out, right? It was a very interesting riddle, and props to Shibazaki for actually noticing it and coming up with the answer to that riddle. So we see the police, they begin to actualize, they begin to recruit people like Shibazaki, which I believe is one of the main reasons why they were able to solve that riddle. Without him, they would probably have been lost as before. So they solve the riddle, they begin to move into this building that they believe the bomb was. And as stated by 9 and 12 towards the end of this episode, where they had, bomb suits mixed in with the other SWAT team suits, right? Which confirms to them that they have linked them with the missing plutonium incident. So they understand that the police have their suspicions about them, have some idea of their past activities and who they might actually be. So this confirms to 9 and 12 that I guess they need to step their game up a little bit, because the police are not as worthless as they expected them to be. They can catch on, and they will, if things don't change, probably catch up to them. So this is interesting. Um, Also, along the other lines, we get an introduction to Shibazaki, the guy who solved the riddle last week's episode and who solved it this week's episode. He was in the police investigation department, and we get a little backstory about him. Things didn't go so well for him in his past, so it seems like he was defunct in that respect. But this guy, he seems smart, he seems cool, and he's actually confirmed this episode to be a second generation Hiroshima victim, his family, Hiroshima victim family. So his family, because he stated that he's actually from the Hiroshima area, which we know Hiroshima with World War II and everything that went down along those lines. So that's interesting to note. We get to see that at the end of this episode, the significance of the bombs that these kids have, it touches a personal note for him, given the fact of his background and being born in that environment. So he knows the real consequences that a bomb of that magnitude has on people's lives around him. So he has a personal take in this, and he's taking it very seriously. But obviously, I don't think these kids are taking it lightly either. They are very serious about their own agendas and their own reasons for doing what they do. So it was nice to see how all of that intermingled and how all of that played and mixed together. But overall, I thought it was a great episode of Zankyou and Terror. The pace of the story seems to step up a lot, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next episode. And yes, as usual, I love the animation. This is my currently favorite animation for the summer anime series that's going on right now. The animation for this series, I liked it the best. It's more realistic. Personally, I just loved it in this episode. Everything about it, especially the animation. So that's it. That's my review. Remember to rate, comment, subscribe. Sayonara.